Human consciousness is the greatest mystery ever recorded in human history. And yet, nobody talks about what it's truly capable of. Not your school, not your doctor, not the people who raised you, and certainly not your church. And I find that genuinely strange, because the one book that has shaped more human minds than anything else ever printed, the one book that has been placed in hotel rooms, courtrooms, hospitals, and homes across every continent on Earth, that book has been remarkably, consistently, and I would argue deliberately used to make sure you never discover what you're actually capable of. I'm talking about the Bible, not as a spiritual guide, not as a historical document, but as the most effective consciousness suppression tool ever constructed. And I don't say that to be provocative. I say it because when you look at the actual historical record, the books that were burned, the mystics that were erased, the verses that were buried, the teachers that were declared heretics, a pattern emerges that is impossible to ignore once you see it. There are 7 levels of consciousness that human beings can reach. Ancient civilizations mapped them. Mystery schools protected them. And for the last 2,000 years, the Bible and the institution built around it worked together to make absolutely sure you never got there. Before this video ends, you won't need me to tell you that's true. You'll see it yourself, level by level, block by block. And once we reach level 7, what you find there will make everything else in this video feel like a warm-up. And it starts here, at the bottom, where almost everyone is, where almost everyone dies. Let me describe your morning. Your alarm goes off. Before your feet touch the floor, your phone is already in your hand. You scroll, news that makes you vaguely anxious, someone else's life that makes you vaguely inadequate, an argument online that has nothing to do with you, but pulls your attention anyway. And by the time you've been awake for 11 minutes, your mental state for the entire day has already been set by things completely outside your control. You go through the motions, work, obligations, the same internal monologue running in the background, the same worries cycling, the same version of yourself showing up, saying the same things, making mostly the same choices. And somewhere underneath all of it, very quietly, a feeling, like you're watching your own life from a slight distance, like the whole thing is happening to you rather than by you. The Gnostics had a precise term for this. They called people living at this level hylics, from the Greek word for matter. Not stupid, not evil, simply people so completely embedded in the material surface of existence that the idea of anything deeper hadn't yet become real to them. The Gnostics believed the hylic state wasn't a personal failure. It was a condition, carefully maintained, actively reinforced. Plato described the same state over 2,000 years ago. He called it the cave. Imagine people chained underground since birth, facing a wall, watching shadows cast by a fire behind them. They have never seen the real world. They have only ever seen its shadow. And here is the part that most people skip over. When Plato describes what happens if one of them is freed and brought into the sunlight, the first instinct isn't wonder. It's pain. And then, the desperate urge to go back. And here is where it gets personal. Romans 13 verse 1. Let everyone be subject to the governing authorities. Proverbs 3 verse 5. Lean not on your own understanding. I'm not going to tell you what to think about those verses. I'm just going to ask you to sit with one question. What happens to a person who genuinely believes that trusting their own thinking is a form of spiritual arrogance and has believed that since childhood? You get someone who stays in the cave voluntarily and calls it faith. But occasionally something cracks. And that crack is where level 2 begins. The seeker. There's a feeling I think you know. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't arrive with clarity or drama. It arrives as a kind of quiet wrongness. You're in the middle of something completely normal, a conversation, a routine Sunday, a moment that should feel fine, and something inside you goes very still and thinks, this isn't it. Not this conversation. Not this version of life. Not these answers. You achieve something you worked years for, and the satisfaction lasts maybe 4 days before the hollow feeling returns. You follow every instruction you were given about how to live, and the life you build feels strangely like someone else's. You sit in a room full of people who all seem satisfied, and you feel alone in a way you can't explain. I remember that feeling, and for a long time I thought something was wrong with me. Nothing was wrong with me, and nothing is wrong with you. What you were feeling is your awareness beginning to outgrow the container it was placed in. The ancient Greeks understood this so precisely that they built an entire initiatory system around it. The Eleusinian mysteries, held annually for almost 2,000 years outside Athens, were designed specifically for people at this exact threshold. Initiates went through a 9-day process involving fasting, ritual, and the deliberate dissolution of their ordinary sense of reality. Not to give them new beliefs, to show them that the beliefs they already had were walls, not foundations. The Hermetic tradition captured this in the opening lines of the Emerald Tablet, one of the oldest and most studied esoteric texts ever recovered. It begins with a statement about the correspondence between the inner world and the outer world, pointing directly at the seeker's internal experience as the actual site of all real knowledge. And here's what I find telling. Matthew 7 verse 7, "Seek, and you shall find." Beautiful, widely quoted, but nobody ever honestly finishes that thought. Nobody asks, what are you going to find when you actually start seeking? Because the early Gnostic Christians sought, genuinely, completely, and what they found was so threatening to the power structure of the early church that by 300 AD, they were being systematically hunted. Libraries burned, communities dismantled, their existence written out of official history. The seekers were eliminated, not debated, not converted, eliminated, and the message installed in their place, the one you probably received as a child the first time you asked a religious question that made an adult visibly uncomfortable, was this: your curiosity is dangerous. Your questions are the entry point for something dark. Think about the first time you felt that. How old were you? And what did that moment teach you, not intellectually, but somewhere deeper, about the safety of asking real questions? Because whatever that moment was, that was level 2 being shut down in real time. And then you find something that feels like the answer. This is level 3, and it is the most beautiful trap ever built. I want to be careful here, because what I'm about to say isn't about dismissing what millions of people genuinely experience as real and meaningful. I understand why the salvation narrative works. It offers something every human being at some point desperately needs: the feeling of being found, of being known completely, including the worst parts, and accepted anyway, of having a framework that makes suffering meaningful instead of random. That is real, and I won't pretend otherwise. But here is what I've come to believe, and this is my honest opinion. The salvation doctrine is the most sophisticated consciousness trap ever constructed, precisely because it's built on something genuine. Here's the mechanism. The moment you accept the salvation narrative in its traditional form, you accept one foundational belief that comes embedded inside it: that you are fundamentally broken, that your natural state is sinful and corrupted, that you cannot access the divine directly because the very nature you were born with disqualifies you, that you need saving by a specific figure through a specific institution according to a specific set of rules. Plotinus, the 3rd century philosopher and founder of Neoplatonism, widely considered the last great mind of the ancient world, spent his entire life documenting the soul's natural ascent through levels of consciousness toward union with what he called the One. He taught that this ascent was the birthright of every human being, that it required no intermediary, that the soul carried within it the inherent capacity for direct divine experience. The early Gnostics went further. They taught that the God of the Old Testament, the one demanding submission, punishing curiosity, requiring blood sacrifice, was not the true divine source at all. They called this figure the demiurge, a lesser, flawed creator who built the material world as a kind of prison, and whose primary interest was keeping consciousness locked inside it. I'm not asking you to believe that. I'm asking you to notice what happened to everyone who taught it. In 325 AD, Emperor Constantine convened the Council of Nicaea. Bishops voted on which texts would form the official Bible and which would be destroyed. The Gospel of Thomas, Jesus speaking about an inner kingdom of consciousness. The Gospel of Philip, spiritual transformation as an internal process requiring no intermediary. The Book of Enoch, detailed maps of consciousness levels. All removed, all burned. Origen of Alexandria, perhaps the most brilliant theological mind the early Christian world produced, taught that the soul evolves through distinct levels of consciousness toward the divine. Declared a heretic 2 centuries after his death. Systematically erased. Ask yourself, what was so dangerous about teaching people they could evolve? And then ask yourself the harder question: does your spiritual life make you feel more sovereign, more capable, more whole every year? Or does it keep returning you to the same place, the same unworthiness, the same need for saving, the same dependency on something outside yourself to complete you? A path that genuinely leads upward doesn't keep bringing you back to broken. The ones who see through it start looking for something older, something beneath all religion. Welcome to level 4, where the real knowledge was hidden. The same geometric pattern appears in Egyptian temples, Greek mystery schools, Hindu cosmology, and pre-Christian Hebrew mysticism, across civilizations that had absolutely no contact with each other. The same ratios, the same mathematical relationships, the same symbolic structures, encoded independently across thousands of years and thousands of miles. That is not coincidence. That is a signal. Level 4 is where you start receiving it. Pythagoras, Greek philosopher-mathematician, founder of a secret mystery school in the 6th century BC, where initiates took 5-year vows of complete silence, taught one single idea his entire life. Numbers are not tools for counting. They are the language in which consciousness and reality are written. His students weren't studying mathematics. They were studying the architecture of existence. The Rosicrucians, a secret brotherhood that emerged in 17th century Europe, claiming access to ancient Egyptian and Hermetic knowledge, built their entire system around one premise: that reality has a hidden structure, and that structure can be learned. The Freemasons encoded this same knowledge into their rituals, using the metaphor of architecture, the lost word of the master mason representing the hidden name of divine reality that institutional religion had deliberately concealed. The Kybalion, a text documenting the 7 Hermetic principles governing all of existence, describes consciousness itself as operating on specific learnable laws: vibration, correspondence, polarity. Laws that work whether you believe in them or not, like gravity. And every single time this knowledge surfaced, it received one label from the church: occult, satanic, forbidden. The Kabbalistic tradition, a consciousness map predating Christianity entirely, encoded within the structure of the Torah itself, declared off-limits. Sacred geometry, the same geometry built into Gothic cathedrals by the very church that banned its study, rebranded as witchcraft. Here is what I want you to notice. Connect these dots yourself. Every tradition that got suppressed had mapped the same territory. Every label used to suppress it came from the same source. And the one thing every suppressed tradition had in common was that it made the individual the site of their own liberation. The knowledge wasn't suppressed because it was wrong. It was suppressed because it worked. But knowledge alone hits a ceiling. Level 5 is where consciousness stops living in your mind and moves into your body. I want you to do something right now. Take one breath. Not a performance of a breath, an actual one. Feel your chest expand. Feel the air move. Feel the slight pause at the top before the exhale. That momentary return to your own physical presence. Most people spend entire decades never intentionally experiencing. Not because they can't. Because they were taught from the earliest age that the body is where the problem lives. Original sin didn't just make human nature spiritually suspect. It made the body itself the site of corruption. Flesh as weakness. Physical desire as something to be controlled, transcended, escaped. The deliberate suppression of physical sensation elevated as spiritual virtue. And I think that is one of the most precisely targeted pieces of consciousness suppression ever successfully installed in the human mind. Because here is what traditions that predate Christianity by thousands of years understood. Your body is not the obstacle. It is the instrument. The ancient Egyptian priests mapped the energy architecture of the human body across lifetimes of dedicated study. They called the spinal column the Jed, the pillar of stability, the axis along which divine energy moved through the physical form. 3,000 years before modern neuroscience had language for the vagus nerve or the autonomic nervous system, they were already working with it in precise, reproducible detail. The Tantric tradition, one of the oldest continuous esoteric lineages on Earth, built an entire science around the body as the primary site of consciousness expansion. Kundalini, the dormant energy described as coiled at the base of the spine, when awakened through specific practice, moves through the body's energy centers, producing states of awareness that make ordinary consciousness feel like sleep by comparison. Hermes Trismegistus gave the world 3 words that every serious student of consciousness eventually confronts. As above, so below. Your body doesn't separate you from the cosmos. It mirrors it precisely. Somewhere in your body right now, there is a tension you've been carrying so long you've stopped noticing it. A physical signature of something you were taught to suppress. That tension isn't weakness. It's information. And nobody can suppress information that lives in your own flesh, unless they first convince you not to listen to it. And then something unexpected happens. Everything you've called yourself, your name, your history, your wounds, your achievements, your beliefs, the story you tell about who you are, at level 6, all of it becomes a question mark. Not destroyed, just revealed as something you built. A structure the mind constructed to navigate physical reality. Useful, functional, and not even slightly the whole story. Underneath it, something else looks back. The Gnostics called this the divine spark, the fragment of original light trapped inside the material self, waiting to be recognized for what it actually is. The Vedantic tradition calls it Atman, the true self that exists beneath all personal identity. Not your personality, not your ego, the witnessing awareness that observes all of those things without being any of them. The Vedantists taught that Atman and Brahman, the individual self and the universal consciousness, are not two different things. They are the same thing, temporarily convinced of their separation. The Hermetic tradition called it nous, divine mind. Not your thinking mind. The deeper intelligence that the thinking mind floats inside of, the way a wave floats inside an ocean without ever being separate from it. Plotinus called it the One, the source from which all consciousness emanates and to which all consciousness inevitably returns. He didn't theorize about it, he described it from direct experience. And then there is Psalm 82 verse 6, quoted directly by Jesus in John 10 verse 34. Sitting in a book that billions of people own right now. Ye are gods. That verse exists. It's in there. And the reason it stays buried isn't theological. It's structural. Because the entire economy of religious dependency collapses completely the moment you genuinely believe what it actually says. They couldn't remove it. So instead, they just never talked about it. And then there is level 7. The one they didn't just suppress. The one they made you terrified of. I need you to think about something. Every quality we've ever been taught to associate with the devil, pride, independence, refusal to submit, rejection of external authority, self-sovereignty, the belief that you require no permission from any institution to access truth directly, are those the qualities of an evil being? Or are those the qualities of a completely free one? In the original Latin, before centuries of religious reinterpretation buried the etymology, Lucifer means light bearer, the morning star, the one who brings illumination. The Luciferian current in esoteric tradition, completely separate from Satanism, which is a modern construct, referred specifically to the principle of direct illumination. Knowledge accessed without intermediary, light that comes from within rather than being handed down from above. The Gnostics had a word for a human being who had reached complete consciousness sovereignty. They called this person a pneumatic, from the Greek word for spirit or breath. Someone in whom the divine spark had fully awakened. Someone who could perceive reality directly, without the distorting filter of doctrine, dogma, or fear. The Gnostics believed the pneumatic state was the natural destination of every human soul, the thing every consciousness was moving toward. And then Genesis 11 verse 6, the Tower of Babel. God looks at unified human consciousness operating at full capacity and says, in the actual text, nothing they plan to do will be impossible for them, and immediately moves to prevent it. That is not a story about arrogance being punished. That is a document describing what a controlling system does when the people it governs become too free. So the people who built that system did something extraordinarily intelligent. They took the portrait of a completely free human being, the pneumatic, the light bearer, the one who needed nothing external to access truth, and they gave it horns. They gave it fire. They gave it a name designed to make every child recoil in terror before they were old enough to think critically about what they were being shown. The final block isn't a verse. It isn't a doctrine. It's an image, installed in your nervous system before you had the tools to question it. Put there for one reason only, to make sure that when you finally arrived at the door of your own complete liberation, you would be too afraid to open it. 7 levels, 1 pattern, and every single one of them blocked by the same book, the same institution, the same system that claimed to be showing you the way while making absolutely sure you never found it. That is not an accident. That is a design. And the only question that actually matters now is which level you've been calling home, not which level you want to be at, which one you're actually living inside right now. Be honest with yourself. Comment it below. Not for me, not for the algorithm, because the moment you name it out loud, something shifts. Something that no amount of scrolling, no sermon, no external voice could ever trigger. And you'll feel exactly what I mean the second you do. If this cracks something open, hit the like button, not as a gesture, because it tells me you're ready for more of this. Subscribe, because what comes next goes even further than this. And if this video found you at the right moment, you already know who else needs to see it. Share it with them. Because some people are standing at one of these doors right now, and all they need is someone they trust to show them it exists.